Hello, hello. What is going on, everybody? Hold on, we're a little bit blurred. Let me see if I back up a little bit closer. I got it. Let me do this real quick. Nah, we should be okay. There we go. All right. What is going on, YouTube? There we go. You're looking at HD right now. But YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, hello. If you guys are tuning in for the very first time, make sure you say hello, drop a comment, drop where you're tuning in from. And, we'll make sure to shout y'all out. But today we are live in the cut, episode number 39, which is crazy. When I started this, I really didn't know where this was going to go, but here we are. And we have a very special guest today, which happens to be a very old friend of mine. I'm actually going to talk about the story later on, but just to give a little bit of background on herself, she teaches finance here at a high school here in Queens. She's, with a business background, applying what many of us, including myself, probably would have wanted to learn and hear in high school, like classes that we would not want to skip. So with no further ado, we have our good friend, Miss Maria P.
Hello,
in the
everyone.
building.
Hi, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Glad you are here.
So I know it's my first time doing a podcast.
Welcome. We are live in the cut, and there's a bunch of people that are tuning in here for the first time who have no idea who you are. So if you could give them just a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, so my name is Maria P. I am currently a high school finance teacher. I teach grades 9 through 12. I do have a fashion business background. I was in the fashion industry for about 5.5, 6 years, from 25 to about 30. I left that. I just literally woke up one day. I didn't want to do it anymore. And I had some guidance from my counselors at school, at Queens College, because that's where I attended. And they told me, hey, why don't you become a teacher? I was like, I don't know.
So is that like, that's not something everyone recommends to people? They must have recommended to you for a reason.
So yes, my mentor in college, she recommended it to me along with our director of the department, the fashion department, excuse me. They both recommended it to me because they just saw me how I was in my group work. They saw how I was with like people underneath me and how I would just guide them.
Okay.
And I also did a few extra programs during the summer at Queens College with the fashion program, and I was usually the leader of those. So they're like, "Oh, you would do great as a teacher," and I was like, "No, I don't like being center of attention. Like just sit in the corner and like be quiet." And I'm like, and I don't know how I would do with kids, but lo and behold, here I am now.
All right, doing it.
Yeah.
So you have the fashion background, the business background. Your counselors decide to kind of give you a positive push in this direction, which I'm sure you. And since I've known you, again, not that I didn't think you would be a good fit. I know when you told me that you were doing finance, I was like, wow, that's cool, because that's kind of what we do on the show. On this show, what I really, my goal on this show, Live in the Cut, is really to share different stories of entrepreneurs, all different walks of life, or just anyone who's done something to get from point A to point B that can help somebody else get from point A to point B. Kids, adults, anybody really. So, the fact that you're teaching finance education, financial literacy, even just like resumes, like all these different things in high school, which is something that personally a lot of me and my friends, we never got this opportunity. Although I did go to Bryant High School, I went there for law. They didn't have finance, and it's something that I think is a little bit more hip now in schools, right?
Actually, it's not as much hip in New York City schools. New York State, it is.
Okay.
Now, I went to Long Island City High School, and we didn't have finance classes. And when I talk to these kids, obviously I tell them, like, guys, this is something I wish I had. And they're like, yeah, Miss P. Yeah. We all know everyone wishes they had this class.
Oh,
And I'm like, no, for real. I wish I had this class. Like, I wish it was taught at more New York City schools. So
that's a fact.
mhm.
And we definitely want to push that narrative because it's stuff that you immediately use like right after school or during, depending how old you are. But before we get to that, because I do want to talk about like how we get this narrative out there and kind of like have it in more schools or what you have going on in your curriculum. But I do want to share the story of how you even got here, because long story short, we haven't seen each other in a pretty long time, but she shoots me a message on Instagram. And what is this? Basically, you could explain it to them because I thought it was pretty amazing.
So at the time, this was literally like, what, 2 weeks ago?
Probably, yeah.
So 2 weeks ago, I was teaching how giving an entrepreneur and how their invention or service has affected your finances, whether positive or negative. So we're going around sharing stories, and then one of my really, really dope students, he goes, "Miss, my barber." And I'm like, okay. And students did start giggling. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, it's a service. So who's your barber? And like, what has he done for you? So he starts explaining. He goes, yeah, I'm a barber. He has been around the world cutting people's hair, and now he's opened up a shop. So as he's speaking, I'm like, wait a minute. This sounds very familiar. I'm like, okay, keep going. He goes, it goes. I'm like, all right. I'm like, when you're done, I'm like, come over to my desk. So he comes over to my desk, and I'm like, is Jonathan the barber? And he's like, Miss, do you go there too? I'm like, no. I'm like, no. I'm like, clearly I do not. I go, no. I'm like, we've known each other from high school. I'm like, I haven't seen him in such a long time. I'm like, and I think this is so funny. But I was still in disbelief to where I pulled up your Instagram account, and I'm like, is this it? And he goes, yeah. I'm like, oh, shit. I'm like, such a small world. So I'm like, are you okay with me telling him you told this story? So long, again, story short, I messaged you, and I was like, hey, I have the student. He told me that you're his inspiration, and yeah.
That was like, for me, immediately I shared that with like my mom, like everybody. I was like, it's whatever is going on, it's working.
No, definitely. He spoke about you so nice. Like, if he didn't, obviously I wouldn't have reached out. But no, he did. He spoke about you so nice that I'm like, I have to call him.
Yeah, again, I don't know. Did you mention his name?
No, I didn't. Wilfredo, if you're watching, here we go.
Shout out to my guy Wilfredo, which we don't know him as that. We know him as Jasniel, and one of the coolest kids that you will ever come across. But I don't know what it was that he decided to say that. But me personally, I believe it's really just I like treating everybody with the same amount of respect, whether you're a kid, whether you're a adult, whether you speak English. Like, I have a bunch of people that walk in here all day long, and it's like,
he was just very like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, he was just talking about like your accomplishments and like what your accomplishments means to him, and like how he looks up to it. And I was like, this is awesome. I'm like, if only more kids had that drive from somebody, because I know a lot of kids, especially in high school, like, it may be a while before they find someone to look up to like that. So the fact that he said you, and so like, you had to be there for this confidence. It was like, I'm telling you, other students were giggling. He was like, my barber. He's like, I don't care, my barber. I'm like, give him a moment. Let him explain.
You know what? If somebody, it's true. It's kind of like, we're your barber, like, and it's, again, going back to how I treat people. Most people, not even barbers, but like adults will come across, and you're working with kids, but it's like adults will go have a conversation with their kid and kind of like brush it off like they're still in little kid mode.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, these guys are a sponge, and everything sinks in. So you know, when I talk to these guys, it's like I talk to them as if they were adults, but like I'm not dumbing it down, but I'm making it in a way where it's relatable. So not dumbing it down, but relatable. So I think that's why, you know, very good reason why, you know, I get along with them so well. But, and you know, prior to being a barber, I was working with kids, right?
Yeah.
So,
kind of a little bit.
Yeah, I was doing the after school program.
Yes. Oh my God, yes, I remember.
So I worked at a bunch of different schools. So working with kids was already there. It was more just, I didn't like the whole system. And we'll talk about that another time. But I knew I could help kids in another way. And, you know, it happened to be here at a barbershop. So
listen, I saw one, and you made wonders with just one. You told me about the podcast and everything. You had it all down packed.
Nice. That's my guy right there, man. So, you know, you obviously, again, your background was in business and in the fashion, and you know, so you end up getting involved and being a teacher, teaching finance. How was it like getting that, like that? I guess the green light saying, hey, like this is your world now.
So it was by luck that I got this job, especially as a finance teacher. So from explaining before, my degree has a very big umbrella. I could do anything that involves with the home. So when it comes to finance, I can even teach the kids cooking, nutrition, interior design. Like it's just a big umbrella. It's called Family and Consumer Science. So when I went to my current job, it was my first interview, and I was not like confident at all. I even said it. I remember I even said it. I'm like, yeah, I'm just here to practice. But lo and behold, I was hired the next day, and I found out because of my strong business background, they gave me personal finance. So with that being said, I was a little hesitant because, you know, you think of yourself and all the like poor choices you've done, and you're like, well, how can I be a role model to this kid when I know I'm in $10,000 debt because of college, you know?
Right.
But fast forward to now, like what, 5 months, not even later, it's like I can't see myself as anything else but teaching finance. Another, going back to making a connection, these are high school kids. So you need to find a middle with them. Okay, so with finance, what I did is I would ask them whether every 2 weeks or every month, like, okay, guys, what do you want to work on next? And I had them choose. So they would choose the topics we learned about. And I would get to know like their interests, like what do you like? So number one interest is Jordans. So I was like, okay, fine. I started incorporating Jordan cells.
That. Nice.
Then like I did a whole unit, which my supervisor actually very shocked about. I did a whole unit on how does advertisements affect your personal finance. So
that's big.
She
can talk about that.
Yeah, she even said, she's like, I would have never guessed. I'm like, trust me, I don't even know how I came up with this. So I basically did like Stranger Things advertisements. I did Michael Jordan advertisements. I did, you know, food, anything you could think of, just advertisements. And I had the kids just, does this affect your finances or does this affect your finances?
Give me an example.
Like I did a Michael Jordan ad, and let's do the Stranger Things Burger King ad. So I knew the majority of them loved Stranger Things. And they're like, I would go buy that burger right now because I love Stranger Things and it looks great. And they're like, now I'm $7 down. I'm like, okay. So then I would also do like, how do subliminal messages in movies affect your personal finance? So I had them looking up movies, and I had movie scenes up, and I would have them pointing out the products.
What's the scene that you guys spoke about?
So I had the Terminator, and there was the Pepsi vending machine in the background.
Ooh, classic.
And actually, it was Wilfredo, because he's very vocal in my class. He goes, I'm just going to go buy a Pepsi now because it's right there. And now I know what they're trying to do.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay. I'm like, now that we have how advertisements, like think of your daily routines. Think of your weekly routines. How are you spending money constantly? Think of the corner deli. how are you spending money constantly? Slowly, I have them writing down their finances. And they're like, Miss, like, we're spending too much money at the deli. And I'm like, well, here you go. Like, how can you not completely stop? So one example that I gave them about not completely stopping was, who here has ever found money in the washing machine? And they like raised their hand, whoever raised their hand. I go, do you spend that money right away because you found it? And you're like, I found this $2. I'm gonna go spend it. And the majority said yes. I'm like, Miss P does it too. I'm having the shame. I go, but is your mind directed to that $2? And they're like, no. I'm like, you should have that method when it comes to saving money. Think of having money in a washing machine that you're not fully aware of. So that I try to incorporate everyday life and everyday scenarios for them to
that's so common.
stick.
Yeah, that's so common to find like $1 or something in your pocket that you're doing for laundry.
Yeah. So then I had kids going, well, now I'm gonna ask my parents if I can wash, the clothes now. I'm like, of course. You're gonna blame it on me.
Oh man. Why are you doing all the laundry all of a sudden? Just checking the pockets, And it's so funny because finding, even if it's just $1 in the pocket, you feel like it's like, this is my day today.
Yeah, I say to them, like, when Miss P finds $20 and they're like, Miss P, you have $20 in your pocket? What are you doing wrong? And I'm like, everything. They call me out on everything. But that's just the relationship I've built with them.
Yeah, and that's cool. I like that, Bob. I kind of treat it as, and even when I was working at the after school programs and working to have my own program at one point, like I always kind of did it like an older brother like kind of relationship.
Okay.
I don't know if that was like the correct way to think of things, but I always looked at it like that because truly, if you were my younger sibling, cousin, my third cousin from another mother, like I would want you to be well because of something that I've done,
Of course, yeah.
So, but going back to the schools, right? So you were mentioning that New York it's not really hip to the financial literacy being in schools. Again, when I was in high school, they definitely didn't have that type of program, at least offered in public school. But what do you see as far as what we have to do to get that like normalized?
So from my understanding, I'm going to now compare it a little bit. So from my understanding with where I am now, the students requested it. Oh. So if it wasn't for them, like I probably wouldn't have a job there.
Really?
But how can I put this? Like we need to have or allow kids to be comfortable to talk about finances. I feel like they're not, because of like, you don't know what goes on at home, you don't know what they're going through. So I feel like when you talk about finances, they become a little bit shy. You know what I mean? In my classroom, I have a very, very, very like strict rule on we will respect one another. We don't know what people are coming from, what they went through, what they're going through, or what they're facing. That's one thing I tell them all the time. And I know a lot of them it's more financial. So I believe that students need to get younger students need to get a little bit more comfortable with talking about money, whether you have it or not.
Right.
Because I've noticed like if you're not comfortable, then you're not going to want to have a whole class on this. Because you don't have, and I had a student tell me like, Miss P, I don't have money. I don't know how to do this class. I'm like, you don't need to physically have money to do this class.
You in the right class.
Yeah, like I'm going to teach you how to get money. So don't worry about it. Like, don't worry about what you have at home. Just pay attention to this class. And I actually spoke to the student. I was like, how about this? I'll give you fake currency for you to work with if it's easier for you to do it with this class.
Wow. Cool.
So I gave her like an idea of fake currency.
Yeah. And
that's what she worked with in class.
There's classes. I have someone who today they were mentioning that they were in is it business management or personal finance class? They're also in high school as well. And it was a class they offered where they have like a virtual currency, and it's kind of like you start off with this amount. By the end of the class or semester, you like whoever kind of generated the most money off of that.
Okay.
Kind of. You get where it's going?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've heard of it because I was actually told to use it, but I'm like, no.
That's a little bit different approach. It's a little bit of a different approach. It's more like a business rather than a personal finance.
Yeah.
Right.
So in the future, I'm actually going to teach them how to buy stocks.
Oh.
That I'm going to do virtually. So there's a website, I believe it's called Wall Street Credit, something like that, but it's with fake currency, but it's strictly online. So I'm going to have them create a stock portfolio and they're going to monitor it with fake cash. I love that. But when it comes to digital, I don't want to touch on that right now. Right. So what I'm actually leaning towards in the next few weeks or so is I'm going to give them Monopoly money.
Nice.
So I'm going to give them Monopoly money, and I'm also going to give them credit and a debit card, and they're going to learn how to utilize them.
Perfect. Honestly, if you could be great at Monopoly, you will be perfectly fine growing up. Like that was a benchmark.
I know, like stealing property, but like I tell my students, please, for the love of God, keep it school appropriate. Like no stealing property.
Right. So you mentioned that the kids were the ones who requested it. Since the kids are requesting it, let's just say, more kids requested it, across the school, and we kind of have it finally normalized, let's just say. Mm-hmm. What do you want to see in the program, or what do you want to bring to this program? That's again just starting off out there, right?
So what I would like to see is different. I know it's going to sound silly, but different levels of personal finance, because what I've noticed is a freshman is not going to relate to a junior or senior. So going back to that comfortable zone, right? I would like to see it where the freshmen and sophomores, let's say, they're getting comfortable to knowing what they already have in their pockets, whether it's from an allowance or doing a chore or whatever. Utilizing that so they could have that sense of comfort. Because trust me, I know it sounds silly, it goes a very long way when it comes to finances in high school. As for my juniors and seniors, or any juniors and seniors, teach them how to survive after high school.
Right.
Teach them how to move out. Teach them how to write a resume. If they go to college, teach them how to have part-time jobs while they're in college. Like that's what I would like to see, like realistic things that they will face. Right. Teach them about school loans. Teach them about all that. Right.
Because going back to like these the stats, right? Like I was looking at this and I put it up on the comments, right? Like 55% of students that are in a traditional high school 4 years, they end up with student loans, and that number is already past 1.75 trillion, just including that high school range coming out in freshman to college, and it's like, bro, who teaches you how to get out of debt when you're already in it? It's like, you should have told me how to get out of that before I got it. And so that's why I really love what you have going on and what you're doing, with kids, because it's not a common topic like a resume. Like who's if I knew how to do a resume, like growing up, I would have saved myself. I probably would have got better jobs. Like,
for sure. But it's like, another thing with them, it's like what I've noticed is the students want to see that you're not a robot. Like they want to see a person.
You buy Jordans too?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They tell me all the time, Miss, you're gonna buy the Jordans. This piece broke. Like we're not gonna do that. But my students know that I'm in debt, like college debt.
I like that you're transparent with them about it too.
Yeah, I'm very transparent.
So they're not like looking at someone that's like on this pedestal. I mean, again, you're the leading the class, but it's like, it's relatable. It's, for me, it comes from a place where she's coming from, where it might be coming from. Again, you don't know everyone's situation.
Yeah, no, you don't. And they're gonna, like you said, they're gonna assume because they see you as a teacher, they're gonna think you make millions. Because I've had that too, and I'm like, trust me, if Miss P was a millionaire, she wouldn't be here. But I'm very transparent with them. I'm like, hey, I've even told them some stories that, some of my struggle stories. I've told them, like, I was in college and there was times where I didn't have enough money to eat, so I had to ration, like what I had in my pocket, what I could eat, how I discovered, the world of couponing. And what I've noticed from that is they're more engaged with you. As a teacher in general, they're more engaged with you when you could not act like you're above them, but you're at eye level with them. So that's what I like to do. And you want to know something? It's created such a good connection with my students.
I bet.
And they're like, to the point where they're like, Miss P, you don't have a story about this? And I'm like, no, not right now. But in the next unit, I do.
I love that. I love that. So what's going on? YouTube, Twitch is live, Facebook. We have some people tuning in here. I don't know if you know who this person is.
Yes,
Miss Annie Who says, yes, Miss Maria, tell them.
Yes. Annie is actually a high school math teacher.
Oh, okay.
She
cool.
is,
yes. At the same school?
No, we're at different schools.
Okay,
different
cool.
schools, yeah.
Shout out to the teachers that are on here. I know it might be a little late. It's a school night, so yeah. I mean, we've been on here for a little over half an hour, but this second part, I kind of want to switch over to more of kind of directly, how can we help push this narrative towards kids? So like something that helped me.
Okay.
And this was obviously not when I was in high school. This was I was introduced to financial literacy very I guess you could say, I don't know if say late, but like I was like 9, maybe 20 years old, right? Mm-hmm. Again, going back to, I was already in debt for college before I even knew about financial literacy. But I was learning about it because I got introduced to network marketing, which is basically sales, direct sales. And, direct sales, most people don't know, or at least everybody's first intuition is like, sales, I don't want to do sales. It's, I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to be the car salesman guy that everybody hates and things like that. But truly, everyone is a sales. Everyone is doing sales, right? Whether you're a teacher, you're a barber, you are selling something. Whether it's your ideas, your thoughts, yourself, whatever it is, that's what a resume is. You're selling yourself, right? You're selling what you have to offer. But I bring that all up to say, I realized in sales that if it was so easy to make $1 million, then everyone would just sell their way to $1 million, or everyone would just work their way to $1 million. And I started, once I got into to that world, I was introduced to people who are making 7 figures, 8 figures, yeah. And it kind of just, the mind is like a rubber band, right? Like once you stretch it out as much as it can, it'll never go back to its original form. It will always stay that stretch, right? So my mind was immediately, I was like, this person right next to me that I shook this person's hand made $1 million.
Yeah.
It was a real person. He was also a young guy. He was also from New York. He was also, just very relatable. And he introduced me or opened my mind to the fact that it was, 7 figures was not a dream. It's like, this could happen. And I got introduced to personal finance, personal development, and books. So the books that helped me the most, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay.
Robert Kiyosaki. And then one more off the top of my head is Who Moved My Cheese? Okay. Good book, right?
It is a good. I haven't read that book in such a long time. But yeah, that's a good book. Yes.
For the people that don't know, they're both very similar books. One is a little bit way more number crunching. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Who Moved My Cheese is a great book for kids. Both good for kids, obviously. But basically both of the stories are, Who Moved My Cheese, right? Is basically there is one mouse who is very conservative, they want to play it safe. They just want to play it safe. And, so they're in this safe space with a certain amount of cheese. And after, time goes by, the mouse has to eat the cheese. So eventually because the mouse wants to stay safe and doesn't want to venture out and do, different things, he ends up running out of cheese.
Mhm.
And, having to deal with the struggles of not having food on his plate. The other mouse in the story took a different route. He took a way riskier route.
Mhm.
So he starts moving around, looking for cheese, going through different places, basically looking for food. And it takes him a long time to find the food. But while the first mouse that didn't have any more cheese because he wanted to play it safe, the mouse that was able to adjust and kind of like play the riskier side and be able to adventure, found a whole new set of cheese or a whole new plate of food that he could eat and kind of continue to do so rather than the mouse that played it safe in his space. And there's like so many different parallels to it, but game changer for kids. For if you're looking for a book to read, like that's something that for me was like a huge help. But like on your end, what do you guys do? What do you guys looking into? Like what are like different things that you guys are because I know you guys do different examples. Are you guys like reading books or different things like that?
So this is very untraditional. I know I do teach very untraditionally, but I try to shy away from books a little bit because again, not everyone's going to be engaged in a book.
For
and
sure.
I don't want to be like, read the book. Just read the book.
Disclaimer.
You know what I mean?
That the mouse who moved my cheese, I watched it on YouTube. It's
Really?
actually way better with the visual on YouTube, and you can catch it on YouTube.
I didn't even know that. So thank you for telling me, because I actually read the book, but I haven't read the book in like
there's a YouTube
over
video.
a decade.
There's a YouTube video for it. It's very
so now
short.
I might show it.
Very short, and it's good.
So once again, going back to like the touch of reality and like showing them things they're interested. I do motivational Mondays.
Ooh.
I didn't even know they appreciated it until I didn't give a motivational Monday last Monday.
What?
No, this past Monday. I'm sorry. So this past Monday, because we're in Regents Week, I just told them, let's do some catch-up work. If you guys are falling behind, if you guys are not understanding, let me know. I'll work one-on-one. But it was funny because students started walking in and they're like, "Where's motivational Monday?" I'm like, "You got that?" I'm like, "Oh my god!" So what I do is I find personal finance quotes. And I try to do funny ones or like some serious ones. What I have them do is I ask 1 to 2 questions, and then I have them elaborate on the quote. Complete free write. One thing I also say in my classroom: there's no right or wrong answer. We're here to learn. So I go to them. I'd rather you give me the wrong answer, so then we can learn together on it. So I do motivational Mondays, which I recently found out that they love.
Nice.
I incorporate financial memes. So
like
there was one I recently did because I was teaching them their gross pay and their net pay. And I'm like, remember, gross, think of opposite, it's the prettier number. I'm like, it's the prettier number. Your net is what you bring home. So I found a meme with like Jamie Foxx, and his gross side was him in a suit, and then his net pay was him like as a sanitation worker. Not that there's anything with against sanitation workers.
Shout out to sanitation workers.
Yes, for sure. No, not that, but he just looked like all messy and stuff like that. So I try to make connections with things that they like would grasp. I also recently gave them an article from Cardi B. Even though I had to edit that article.
I'm sure.
So with the Cardi B article, she stated, it was actually recently too, I believe a month ago, to play it safe, she stated how she started noticing the difference in her money that was being spent for food. Now it's Cardi B. She doesn't go food shopping herself. By all means, she's worked for it.
Right. So
she said that she saw such an enormous difference that she went to the store because she's like, I don't know what's going on. The numbers are like, they're correlating, like they're matching. So she mentioned lettuce. She's like, last week lettuce was $2. This week lettuce was $7. So I told my students, I'm like, that's a $5 difference.
Right.
I'm like, and this is Cardi B, like, and she's noticing it. So how do you think you guys would feel, or someone from a lower income home would feel? So now, being at the fact that I got so lucky finding that article from Cardi B. I'm like, if someone as Cardi B is feeling this, how do you guys feel? And I had some students like, Miss P, she has a lot of $5 bills in her bank account. I'm like, that's not the point. I'm like, yeah, she does, but this is the real, like, the realism of this world right now.
Right.
So that's what I do. I just try to make a connection with everyday life.
No, I like that. The memes, I'm sure, is a hit because they're all over it. I'm sure.
I know I'm like the corny teacher. Like, they probably think I'm trying to fit in, but I'm like, it's working though, right? It's working. You guys are engaged. You guys are engaged.
No, they know what's up. I mean, like, you know, I think that's, again, going back to, you know, when I was working with kids, and even, you know, the kids that have relationships now, you know, as my clients and I cut their hair, it's really just being able to relate to them on a level where, you know, again, like, there is a point that we're trying to get through to you, but there's also a point where it's like, I know if I do too much, it's gonna go in this year and not the other year.
Yeah, that's why I shy away from books, because I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I'm gonna hover over you. So if I have to do this with quotes, with articles, with memes, I'm like, this is what I'm gonna do. It's to the point where my coworkers are like, when do you go to sleep? I'm like, you don't even want to know. I'm like, I need to get through to them, and this is how they respond. Like, this is where they respond. So I give the kids what they want.
So as a teacher, do you get like tests?
Going back to my untraditional way of teaching, I don't. Let me stop. I do, but once a month.
Well, like, I'm just curious, like, how one would get, like, I'm just curious, how would you test somebody? Or, like, how would you, you know, because, again, the way I see it is, if I'm testing you on something, it's because I want to see if you learned something in the class, obviously. So it's like, in your case, how are you gauging that?
So I give them reviews. I do give them reviews, but I do use, like, game platforms. So, like, Kahoot. There was another, I think, Jigsaw.
Okay.
So we'll do charades. I'm actually working on making my classroom like a Jeopardy setting.
Cool.
So whichever team gets the highest points or wins gets 5 extra points on their exam. So I do I do a little competing thing, but I do give them a review because, once again, I understand not everyone's a good test taker. I was never a good test taker. I would rather write you 20 pages than take a test.
Right.
So going back to my untraditional teaching style, I always said, if I was to become a teacher, I don't want to be the teacher I didn't like. I know that sounds very harsh.
But that's really where the best teachers are made, you know?
Thank you, but it's very harsh. So I do give them a chance with testing. I am more into, let's have a conversation.
Right.
I want to see you engaged. I want to see you start a debate in my class, which I do. I have kids start debates, and I'm like, don't talk to me, talk to each other. Obviously, I'll time them. I'm like, listen to each other. Don't just argue. Listen to what your peer is saying. It's okay to disagree. Like, agree to disagree, but respect each other. Right. Learn from each other. Tell each other where you don't agree. So that's how my classroom goes, for them to remember it. And shockingly, it works.
Right.
Like, it works. They're over here going back to Junior, because I'm telling you, he keeps the classroom going. We were talking about, oh my God, I'm blanking. I'm sorry. We were talking about, like, briefly about cards and, like, how to be frugal when you're shopping. So, like, how to look for, like, the cheaper things.
Right.
He's like, Miss, we went to the supermarket with my mom, and she didn't have her card, and I had to give her my debit card, and I told her, this is the only amount you get to shop with it, because she's like, I'm on a budget. I'm like, oh my God, your mom's gonna come after me. Like,
you got my son putting me on a budget? Like, what's going on?
So yeah, but all that comes from conversation. It doesn't come from a test. It comes from conversation.
I love that.
So
I had something that's just slipped my mind as well. But, you know, there's a lot of financial literacy, to say the least, this, I would say, post-COVID, like 2020, has made like a huge surfacing on social media, just everywhere, really. Why do you think it's something that we like really need to have a conversation with these kids about?
So, before I continue this conversation,
Yeah.
I say like I hate using COVID as an example because like I just want it to be done with.
Right.
But the reality is, it's like what you said, we need to have a conversation of this. So going back to having a conversation in the classroom, kids don't know, young adults, because I'm a high school teacher, they don't know how to have a conversation. Not in a bad way, it's just the shyness of it. So when it comes to COVID and people being set back, children being set back from it, it's like, well, what was one thing that you lost academically? Like, think about that. So one of the things they lost is being able to communicate with one another.
For sure.
Another thing they lost was kind of having someone overlooking their shoulder, like to make sure they're doing the work, to understand the work, and stuff like that. But again, they don't want that person over them. So you kind of have to tiptoe around it as to like, okay, financial literacy, this is how they are. How do I say this to them without them feeling like I'm belittling them?
Right.
You know what I mean? So there's times where I do like a vocabulary list. We've all had vocabulary lists. But there's some words where I see a good majority of students, like, they don't know them. And I have to hold myself back from like, you don't know this word? Like, what is going on? So that's where the conversation with COVID starts happening. Like, okay, tell me what words off this list you have heard of. And then they'll tell me, well, miss, I haven't heard this before COVID. I haven't heard this word at all. And these are words that they should have known. You know what I mean? Like, unethical.
Strong word.
It is a strong word. And I had a majority of my students, they're like, oh, I don't know what that means. Subliminal. Simple words. I think you and I probably had that in 7th grade, right?
Sure, yeah.
Probably around 7th grade. I had seniors who weren't sure. And I'm like, okay. And then, going back to being comfortable, they're like, well, miss, with COVID and everything, I was just to myself.
Right.
I was doing this.
It's the real deal.
Yeah. And I'm like, all right, well, how can I help you get out of that mentality? Because now it's, what, 2 years?
Right.
2 years post-COVID. How can I help you get out of that mentality? What can I do for you? And you see they appreciate that. And they'll tell me, miss, can you incorporate videos? Miss, can you incorporate this? So here's Miss P now until 3 o'clock in the morning, redoing everything. Let me incorporate videos. Let me incorporate this. Let me incorporate that. So these are things that are needed to help them catch up.
Nice.
When it comes to COVID.
And I could appreciate what you got going on, because I think that this, and I scratch that. Not that only I think that. I'm pretty sure this is a known fact that our school system is super outdated.
The majority of it is. Yeah, the majority it is.
I think I was reading somewhere that the business of it was created by Rockefeller.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And what Rockefeller had going on at that time, this guy, again, one of the richest people in the world to this day, his family name. And I, realized like this guy had businesses that he wanted to hire people for. And it's like, okay, cool. Let me create a school system and have, basically cater it for people to end up working here in places like this. Mm-hmm. And obviously we're in a different day and age where social media, marketing, we live in a world where you could work physically and digitally anywhere. Mm-hmm. So, when I hear, people like yourself that are implementing, this new wave of like, again, whether it's financial literacy, personal finance, and just these conversations for me, I understand like, oh, this is what we were waiting for. This is why I wasn't paying attention half the time.
Yeah.
And that's why, how are the parents? How do the parents feel about it? Because again, this is kind of new, right?
It's very new. Like I just started in September. I told you.
Right.
So.
And they didn't have a program before.
No. So personal finance, I signed up, and then personal finance came. I'm like, all right, let's do this. So my first parent-teacher conference, I remember I had 32 parents, and my coworkers, who are amazing, my coworkers were like, "What? We have like 2." I'm like, "No, I have 32."
That's awesome.
I was like, "I have 32. I'm nervous. Like, I don't know." And we still do it off of Zoom.
Cool.
So a lot of the parents were very thankful that we were teaching them finance. But then a lot of parents were telling me, you're my kid's favorite teacher. I'm like, I am. I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure? Like, they're like, no, yeah, they come home and they talk to me about what they learned, and, they want to look this up. And I'm like, okay, thank you very much. Tell them, So the majority of the parents I spoke to, and I try to make it a point to reach out to parents, not only for, I don't want to say negative comments, but like if their kid needs a little push. But I also believe that we should call parents for positive. So I do call parents like, hey, hi, this is, so-and-so's personal finance teacher. And they're like, what did my child do? I was like, no, your child is great. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, they're doing perfectly fine. So the parents do appreciate that finance is being brought into their lives, and that they wish that it was brought in sooner. So I'm just very thankful that I'm the one giving their kids that opportunity.
Got you. I love that. And it's funny that you mentioned most people are calling the parents for like negative stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's like they're getting a phone call like, wait, you not complaining? Tell me more. Like,
yeah, it was crazy. But even when I do call, like, I hate saying negative, but like, let's just say negative. I hate that. I try to make it as positive as possible.
Right.
I'm like, hey, your child was late 3 times this week, but takes initiative when we do, classwork and group studies. I just want them to work a little bit more on coming to class a little bit earlier. That's it. Like I try to incorporate a positive into that. Mm-hmm. You don't want to fully go in there negative, because again, going back to the beginning, you don't know what their home life is like.
Very true.
You don't know what their home life is like. You don't want to be the reason something happens, and whether good or bad. So I try to always keep those phone calls positive.
I like that. Let's go.
Especially since these parents are taking this class more serious than like their history class.
Right, you got 32. You had a whole class of parents there.
I was like, and it was funny because it was off Zoom, so they were able to like join in without having me accept them in.
Oh, okay.
So I was like sitting there eating. I'm like, okay, I got 5 minutes eating, and then all of a sudden a parent pops up. I'm like, oh, I'm like, hi, how are you? Like,
different times.
I know, it was so funny, and I was like, oh no, I'm okay. Like, who are you? Let me write you down.
Nice.
But it was. I remember after that first parent-teacher conference, I cried. I put everything away to make sure my camera wasn't still on, and I cried, and I was like, I'm happy that I made this whole thing of doing a career change, and I'm happy that I'm the one not only making the students comfortable, but making their parents comfortable.
Let's go.
Let's
go. What's going on? Facebook, YouTube, I see you on here. Make sure if you've been tuning in that you drop a like, share this with your friends and family. And if you are on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube so you can see more of the show. But if you're on here right now and you haven't had a chance to say hello, make sure you say hello so we can get to you. Questions or anything you want to ask, we could definitely get to them here as well. And we literally hit the 10 o'clock mark. So, one of the last things I want to ask you, because you gave us a lot, and I appreciate you for sharing the whole story and what you have going on. But one of the last things I want to share, I kind of want to ask is, if I am a finance student and I'm just entering your class as a freshman, how are you explaining things to me rather than explaining something as a senior coming in? You know, if I just came to your class and you're kind of like selling me on your class, right?
So
not selling me, but like
no, it is a sale.
Right.
It is a sale because you want that child to stay there.
right engaged.
Yeah. So I have them answer one question, and the one question is, "What does personal finance mean to you?" And they could literally say anything. Like they can literally say my barber, and I will make a connection with that. So after that specific question, I give them an index card and I have them write down what are some things you want to see, what are platforms you want to see. So they'll tell me YouTube, Kahoot, all this, and I'll go based on that. Then I'll make a presentation for them and I'm like, this is what this class is about. How do you feel?
Interesting.
So I'll take their answers and incorporate my own little gist to make them once again feel comfortable and
no wonder why these kids like your class. They're literally designing it themselves.
Yeah, no, they have full range. Like one before we end, they wanted a segment on buying a car. I'm like, are you guys sure? I put them through the ringer for that one.
Nice.
But they're like
leasing or financing?
Everything.
Wow.
Used. I had them choosing from like a 1994 Chevy DeVille car, and they're like, what is this? I'm like, this might be your car. Like, if you play your cards right or wrong. So they are
good.
literally modeling this class.
Wow. That's actually really good. So as we close this up, what do you want to tell the kids specifically? Let's just say they're leaving your class. I'm a senior, right? Then, or whether it could be like summer vacation. I'm not gonna see you until next year, whatever.
Okay.
What do you want to tell these kids about finance? And what your narrative is in this specific niche that you have going on.
I will tell them what are the 2 words Miss P always tells you to have first, and they will respond, prioritize, and categorize.
Prioritize and categorize. Let's go.
Prioritize what's most important to least important, and categorize, categorize where it falls in your pocket.
Let's go. Well, you heard it here first. Live in the cut. Do you want to share anything, before we close this off, to the people that will be watching this, the YouTube, again, the kids, prioritize, categorize. But to anyone else that's watching this, and if not, let them know what you have in store or what you're working on with the kids. And sometimes I usually say where they're gonna catch you at your next event, because I have a lot of different entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I've seen.
But just kind of share those last words, and we'll go from there.
Sorry. So in my classroom next, I'm actually teaching the kids how to create a resume and a cover letter. So for everyone out there listening, you might have one of my students come apply for a job if you own a store.
Nice.
And also for adults, just get comfortable with talking to these young adults about finances. Like, it's okay. And also another thing I tell my students, they don't need to have it all figured out right now. They just have to learn how to create a path for themselves.
How do we get, as adults, how do we get more comfortable having this conversation? Especially if I'm that parent that's like, man, I'm in debt too. Like, how am I gonna have this conversation?
Tell them, be as real as possible. Once again, they do not want to see robots. They want to see a person. You don't have to be fully raw. Give them enough for them to grasp the reality of what's going on. Yeah, it might be a sad thing, but you want to know something? It's going to open up their mind to, like, you know what? My parent or guardian trusts me enough to tell me these things. How can I help them?
And they'll also remember it.
For sure.
Man, my mom wasn't buying me those Jordans back in the day not because she didn't love me. She was doing that thing that Miss P said, prioritize and categorize, and that wasn't on the list.
And to make sure that there was food and a roof
exactly
over my head, other than Jordans at my feet.
I love that.
Yep.
Let's go. Well, listen, this has been another episode live in the cut. We'll be back here next Wednesday with a very good friend of ours as well, who happens to be a sports therapist that owns his own business on Steinway called Recovery NYC. We'll have my boy Keith on here, and I look forward to tapping into the healthier side of the physical therapy and staying in shape, but ultimately also the business plays behind it. But again, I appreciate you being here.
Well, no, thank you for having me.
Yes,
we'll
definitely talk about being in the school. But other than that, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I'll catch you guys next week. Peace.
Have a good night.